Something Came In From the Blizzard by Grace Omega. Last week, my town was hit by an unseasonable blizzard. I live in a country that doesn't normally get a lot of snow, and we were paralysed. Schools shut, employees told to stay home, and every shop in my town was closed, except for the one I work at. My manager decided that we'd corner the market by staying open, and I was chosen to man the till during a shift from 2 till 10 p.m. Of course, no one showed up all day. Why would they? The roads were impassable, and anyone who went outside got whipped by freezing, howling winds, as I discovered myself when I trudged through nearly knee-high snowdrifts to the store. The day passed slowly. I spent most of it staring at my phone, listening to the wind shriek outside and wondering vaguely if the roof was going to collapse. When news of the blizzard broke, people had stripped the shelves of essentials, so we only had junk food and some office supplies left, and I really don't think anyone could be that desperate to get their hands on either. At 9 o'clock, just as I was starting to wonder if I could get away with sneaking off an hour early, the phone rang. I picked it up, thinking it was my manager checking in on me. "Hello?" I said. Silence. The connection was poor, and there was a lot of hissing and crackling. After a few seconds, the call terminated. I hung up, assuming the phone lines were damaged, and wondered if the electricity was going to go next. I had barely finished this thought when the lights in the shop flickered. That was the last straw. I was leaving, and I didn't care if I got fired for it. But as I was getting up from my seat at the front till, I saw something unexpected. A customer had arrived. I hadn't heard her come in, which was strange, because anyone coming through the automatic front door would let in a blast of cold air and the howling wind. She was very thin and quite short, so much so that I couldn't guess her age. She stood, motionless in front of the doors, dripping water on the floor as the snow clinging to her clothes melted. "Hello?" I said. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I was beginning to wonder if she had hypothermia or something. Her jeans were soaked through, and she wasn't wearing gloves. Her jacket, one of those heavy-duty ones that zip up to cover most of your face, it was purple, and that will become relevant in a minute, was built for this sort of weather, but the rest of her clothes weren't. The customer jerked, as though I had startled her, and then started to move with a strange, stiff-legged gait, quickly vanishing behind a shelving unit. Her appearance and the way she moved left me unnerved. I heard her wet shoes squeaking on the floor in time with her erratic, jerky movements, and had a prickle of unease run up my neck. I should have gone to help her. It's store policy when there's only one customer on the premises. It makes people feel appreciated. But I stayed where I was, waiting for her to come to me. Except she didn't. Her wet footsteps stopped. Minutes passed. I glanced around, leaning over the counter to get a better view, but there was no sign of her. Now I really started to worry. Had she collapsed? As I was getting up to go check, the phone rang again, nearly giving me a heart attack. This time, the call went through. It was my manager, and he was calling to tell me to keep an eye out for a teenage girl who had gone missing in the snowstorm, as the police thought she might seek refuge in the nearest available building. She had last been seen wearing jeans and a purple jacket. I freaked out. There was no sign of the girl in the store. She couldn't have left. I'd have heard the doors opening. As I was poking around the shelves, calling out in a softer voice than I intended. "Hello? Are you there? Are you all right?" The lights flickered again and went out. The night was bright with that odd blue haze that fills the air in a heavy snow, but I still had to take out my phone for light. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Wet rubber soles on the lino moving away from me. I stopped calling out. Something wasn't right. Lost, half-dead people didn't creep around like that. I got to the frozen food section, where there weren't as many tall shelves to block my view. Nothing moved in the darkness. Even the ever-present hum of the refrigerators was gone with the power out, leaving the store in total silence. "Hello," I said again. "Are you there?" Squeak, directly behind me. I didn't turn around. Of course I didn't. By this point, I was terrified. I just stood there, hoping like hell the noise had been my imagination. Something touched the back of my neck. Something as cold as ice. Now I turned around. In the pale light of my phone's torch, the girl's face was bone white. Blonde hair poked from under her hood, matted to her forehead and cheeks. But the worst was her eyes, the only part of her face clearly visible beneath the hood and the neck of her jacket. They were wide and bulging in terror, staring and unfocused. They were the eyes of a corpse. Somehow, I didn't scream. I was too scared even for that. I just gasped, once, like someone plunging into cold water. I waited for her to rush at me, to tilt her head back and reveal a mouth of fangs, to leap onto me and sink her teeth into my face. She stepped closer to me and raised her arms. They moved stiffly. Her fingers were locked in a curled position, like a monkey's paw. I stood there, rooted to the ground in fear, waiting for the end to come. Her stiff arms wrapped around my shoulders. Her body was cold and heavy, like something carved out of stone. A low, moaning noise came from the girl's chest, a sound like the wind roaring outside. I flinched in fear. It took me a few seconds to recognize the hitching, muffled sounds coming from the frozen ruin of her throat. She was crying. I'm still not sure what made me do it. It didn't make any sense. I guess some human instincts are just too deeply ingrained to shut down, even in the middle of the worst terror. I put my arms around her. The girl vanished. There was no flash of light, no puff of smoke. One moment she was there, and the next she was gone. It was like coming out of a fugue state. The terror of the last 15 minutes overcame me like a tide, and I ran from the store, straight into the storm, not caring that I wasn't wearing my coat or gloves. I ran all the way back to my parents' house, barely feeling the cold. The howling wind sounded like the frozen girls crying, and it followed me every step of the way. By the time I got inside, my nose and fingers were numb. I later learned that I had developed minor frostbite. When the storm ended and the snow thawed, someone found her body in a derelict field on the edge of town. She was 15 years old, and she had gone out into the blizzard unprepared for reasons no one understood to this day. The police speculate that she had gotten lost in the heavy snowfall and had blundered into the field. Maybe she mistook the shield of thin woodland surrounding it for the trees around her house and had stumbled through the howling dark, expecting at any moment to see the comforting lights of home. I'll never know why she came to my shop that night. Maybe she was afraid that no one would ever find her body. Maybe she didn't want her parents to suffer the uncertainty of not knowing what had happened to her. Or maybe she just wanted to come in from the cold one more time. I just want to thank Grace Omega for allowing me to narrate this story. If you liked what you heard here, head over to their Reddit page and check out their other work and show them some love. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, and as always, stay tuned for one more nightmare.